So I started taking a regular inventory, and then it was time to continue on with this program and look at prayer and meditation. I was in the program before and heard one of the most brilliant things, and I believe it's in the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. But prayer was talking to God, but meditation was listening. And to really study prayer, that's what prayer is. It's both talking and listening. My sponsor will tell you that I don't know the difference, or I didn't anyway. That I needed to listen more and talk less. In old 12-step programs, if you were new, especially within your first year, you weren't allowed to talk. As the saying goes, if they wanted to know how to get drunk or high, they'd ask you. And that was definitely the case for me. I lived at that point 32 years of the wrong way. My reactions to things weren't positive at all. Getting drunk and getting high was sometimes, oh yeah, that made the problem worse, but there was more to it than that. So I needed to, in a sense, it's like every morning I wake up, and especially early in sobriety, it was like every morning you wake up to the just some loud, crazy, insane music. Especially I was a heavy metal fanatic at the time. So that's kind of the way I stood. It was like waking up every morning to that alarm, going off to a heavy metal station in my head, and I couldn't stop it. So I started getting up every morning and reading something spiritual in nature. And I'll be honest, I actually have this because I'm finally rereading it and going over it again. I didn't pick up the big book. I picked up this, The Spiritual Practices of Ninja. Well, it's spiritual in nature, and I'll tell you what, as long as I got a book in my hand, whether it's this book, a 12-step book, or whatever, I don't have a drug in my hand. If you got a copy of the big book, you could throw it at somebody because that's pretty heavy. That's why I always recommend getting a big hardback edition. But I found there was some peace and there was serenity. And so it was like turning the station every morning from heavy metal to, I don't want to say the God channel, that might scare somebody off, but to something peaceful, to to a relaxing station, where the creative energy could flow. Because if you're anything like me, when I came off the drugs, before I was on drugs, I was insane. When I came off the drugs, I was still insane. There's the difference for somebody like me. Sanity did not return by taking away the booze and the drugs. Matter of fact, I might have been more sane on the drugs than off, at least the very end. So my sponsor started. I don't know if he remembers telling me the story or not, but he talked about reading a book by Zig Ziglar. And if I'm correct about this, Zig Ziglar is like a used car salesman. He is the used car salesman. And to know my first sponsor, that makes a lot of sense. He didn't make it so much about reading the Bible and, being an obedient person. It was, what can I do to better myself every day? For me, that's what meditation was. First of all, there's prayer and meditation. And for somebody like me, you probably need to say a quiet time too, whether it's just a few minutes. If you smoke a cigarette, have a cigarette. If you drink a cup of coffee, have a cup of coffee or tea or whatever you do in the morning. Or just quiet and still, where I'm not praying, where I'm not reading. The more quiet time I've had, and I've noticed this in sobriety, I'm terrible about leaving a television on when I go to sleep. I stopped doing that again, and I started noticing I was a little more content with myself and life. My mind got a chance to rest and recover. So I needed to do that for my son. I still leave the TV on, but I turn it completely off. TV's on just as as a night light for him. And I like to get up, and I can tell days when I don't get up and I don't, pray. I mean, the prayers I do are in the big book. There's a 3rd-step prayer. There's actually a resentment or 4th-step prayer. There's a 7th-step prayer. And at that point, there's those 3 prayers. And if you notice, it's only after the 7th-step prayers are an amen. So technically that seems like it's one big prayer. I also like to, I just ask God for a day of sobriety, not 24 hours a day, because what if I'm up longer than that? I hope not, but if a day is for me when I'm up till the time I go to bed. So that's why it's also nice to construct my day around the idea of, well, I'm going to have a beginning and an end, because I used to not have days like that. It would be sometimes 3, 4 longer days going out there. So, which makes it more manageable to stay sober, both physically and all the way from mental, emotional, intuitional, and spiritual. And I need that time to recover, to shut my brain off, because it went on and on and on for years. And it's pretty powerful in that sense. So, but in order to not only switch it to something um, that would be a little more harmonious and a little less insane, the spaghetti noodles in my head, but also to start having productive thoughts. When I asked for help, and I got it, careful what you ask for. AA is I think the only place that I really ever got the help when I asked for it, when I really needed it too, was my sponsor told me, and this might be a terrible example because I've got stuff written in here now, but they said, go home, get your big book, go to the first 2 pages on the inside cover, not page 1 and 2, the first 2 pages. So it was teaching me already to listen at that point, is to go open it up, and the big book lists everything that I know about staying sober. It's just a wonderful chronological order of listing, everything that I know, and you'll be absolutely amazed because how did they know all that? So you go and you open it up and it's absolutely blank, and you want to go and kick their living, what in. Someone told me before I actually went home, which might have been good because I would have came and found them the next day. We had a little discussion about that, but it was funny, but it was true. And so I like to re-educate myself. It's not just learning to stay sober, it's unlearning all the things that I did in my past. Some of us are sicker than others. And if you're not as sick as I am, this can still be a powerful tool, because if it works for somebody like me, it can definitely work for you. I think I don't want to say the lower end of things as a prideful thing. I don't want that, but I was low, and now I'm learning and I'm retaining stuff, and sometimes I have to reread it. Because I used to get up and do drugs every morning, something. So I had to find a sufficient substitute, and I have to continue to get up every morning, and my drug is reading, whether it be an AA book, a meditation book, the good book, and just another book that's as far as something to learn, continue to learn, that not contradicts so much what we do, but adds to it, But then again, if it's something that's contradictory, that's great too. It's always good to hear the other side of things. And for me, I think when I do pray, I don't need to necessarily pray. I mean, I say my usual prayers, but instead of pause, praying, and proceeding, if I start my day, that's one less thing I got to do. I just pray and then proceed. And go, and it seems to work really well. I've noticed though too, there's times when during the day I just need to stop, and I like reading. Maybe that was a childhood dream. Was I always remember seeing in first grade, there were students who could just read, and I'm not saying that I was not capable. I just wasn't there yet, and they would read and read and read, and I really was in a sense jealous. Now I find that if I do that I find a little bit of peace. Now, don't get me wrong. There are times when I hit low points in doing that. And it's not how much do I read, it's the quality of what I'm reading. That's important. The world's libraries are filled with good books. Now we have the internet and Amazon and Adobe Acrobat, where we can read a lot, get really good information for absolutely free. Why not take advantage of that? Again, growth and maintenance, for me, thank goodness, my sobriety is not contingent on my spiritual condition. Because my spiritual condition can suck, not by my fault, but by my reaction to the world. I could have a country music song happen to me. My dog died, and my shoelace broke, and this, and that, and things aren't going my way. But I didn't get drunk or high today. Why is that? It's about the maintenance. And these are why I do these things first thing in the morning. Do I always do this? I would like to say out of 499 times out of 500, yes. There are just some days it doesn't happen. However, I'm looking for that peace and that serenity, because my goodness, if I don't have peace and serenity in this program, I have absolutely nothing. And I see this, I see people with 5 to 10 to 15 and over 20 plus years that just don't look peaceful, don't look serene, and definitely don't act like it. And over time, too, I think the most important thing my sponsor said was, always, actually his sponsor told him this. First one, he said, don't rely on this. This was our problem. Rely on the book and rely on books. For me, it's considering the source. Obviously, maybe sometimes Wikipedia is not going to be the best source. Look at scholarly sources. Look who's writing it. And just see. Look at this. Stick with the winners. Look at the result of the person who wrote it. Mark Divine, a Navy SEAL commander with over 20 years of, in the teams, and then having a successful SEAL fit business. And he wrote this book, and it was just wonderful. That's where I get the 5 levels of sobriety from, was to talk about the 5 mountains. This man was had I think a master's degree, an MBA, and then a career, and just up and decided he needed to be a Navy SEAL and follow his intuition, and he just continued to do that. And I can learn a lot from somebody like that. It doesn't always have to be someone in sobriety. And that's something else I really want to point out is, and I'm only going to say this about me, don't always take my word and what I say is law. Remember what I was doing a few years back, Remember, I was doing drugs, and I was pissing and shitting both literally and physically and metaphorically on everything. All of us are in the room, but sometimes we may have our experience, but there may be a better experience to get. And a lot of times, to me, it just seems like a magical process of writing something down, having it edited, having people look at it, having it published, and then especially if it's reviewed and critiqued in a positive manner, and sometimes not too. I got to find out what works for me. So, thank you.